Hey guys, welcome back to another video with OrmsTV. Today we have something pretty special for you. Yeah, that's it, 5D Mark IV. Now, Canon literally walked in the front door about 5 minutes ago and handed us this unit, and just mind blown, fantastic thing to get into your hands for the first time, but it's a pre-production sample and we can't actually really use it and show you anything from it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a quick first impression review on it, run through the specs, detail some of the features that I think is the most important, and then very soon, hopefully within a week, we'll have a full production unit and we will give you a proper review on it where we take the camera out and use it in the wild. So let's have a quick look. Okay, so 5D Mark IV, what do you need to know? Important bits basically break down like this. So the camera's got an all-new 30.4 megapixel CMOS sensor in. It's also got a dual autofocus system with 61 points, 41 of which are cross-type. It's essentially the exact same autofocus system that Canon just transplanted out of the new 1DX Mark II, so that should be very impressive. In addition, it shoots at 7 frames a second continuously. It's got improved weather sealing, so that will be quite handy. It's also running a native ISO range of 100 to 32,000, and that's expandable to 102,400. Now, that's not a big step up from where the Mark III was, but Canon is promising massive gains in low light performance and noise reduction. So we'll also see later on how that plays out. So that's sort of like your boring specs. Not that a new 30.4 megapixel sensor is boring by any stretch of the imagination, but when you get into the meat of it, there's a couple of other things that really stand out. Firstly, you've got a 3.2-inch full touch screen at the back now. And that's the first time that Canon's put one of those into the 5D series. And we've already seen that technology work beautifully in stuff like the 80D, I'm thinking, 80D, 70D, that kind of cameras, where the video really features quite strongly, and you can do autofocus select on your touch screen. Also very nice if you're swiping through pictures or even navigating the menu. Quite a handy little feature that. Also, the camera has Wi-Fi, NFC, and GPS built in. Also, speaking under correction, but I think that's the first full-frame Canon camera with all of those features built in. Then, the big thing at the moment, 4K video. Canon has finally put 4K video into a 5D body. So this unit will run DCI 4K at 30 or 24 frames per second using Motion JPEG. In addition, that also allows you to grab a 4K still from the footage. Now, a 4K still from this camera will give you an image of 8.8 megapixels, which is pretty impressive. If you think about it, if you're recording 30 frames per second and you can pull an 8.8 megapixel still from that, that's basically like having a camera that's running 30 frames per second in stills. It's quite fantastic. Then Canon's massive claim in this camera is something called the dual pixel RAW. Now, that effectively has the camera taking 2 raw images, and it allows you to do micro adjustments on the image in post-production. And I'll go into some detail on that in just a second. Okay, so let's first talk about the 4K video, because that really is what everybody wants to know about when it comes to the 5D. So 4K video at 30 frames or 24 frames, depending on where you live and how you want to shoot. What the camera does when it records the 4K is it actually crops in on the sensor. So it doesn't sample the entire sensor. It crops in on the sensor and uses the center part of the sensor to record the 4K video. Now, that, if you've already picked it up, means that your lenses will be cropped when you're shooting 4K. Specifically, on the 5D Mark IV, that's a 1.64 times crop, which is a little bit unfortunate, but not the end of the world. You still get your 4K output, so no problems there. Then the unit will only record 4K internally. So it records the 4K footage onto the compact flash card. Incidentally, there's a compact flash and an SD card slot. So your 4K footage is recorded internally. It cannot be output over the HDMI, unfortunately. Might be something that Canon adds later on in a firmware update. We really hope they do, because come on Canon, that's what we all want. So regarding the 4K footage, it's an 8-bit compression on there. It's 422 subsampling, and you're running at around about 500 megabit per second on your encoding. So that all seems very impressive. The sample footage that we've seen thus far, really good. No complaints on that. Again, when we get a full production model, we'll give you a proper rundown and we'll shoot some footage and show you guys what it actually looks like. Then the other big feature that I want to touch on in detail is, well, what I think personally is going to be the big selling point on this camera, and that is the dual pixel RAW. Now, sure, it's a little bit like magic, but I'm going to try and explain it because I think it's super important on this unit. So with the dual pixel autofocus system, each and every pixel on the sensor effectively has 2 photodiodes. Now the photodiode is the part of the sensor that actually captures the light. Now on the sensor, each of those photodiodes are angled slightly away from each other. So Canon refers to it as one looking left and one looking right. Now in all previous cameras that had this system, when you were taking pictures, when you were shooting RAW, both of those photodiodes would create one single stream of information and it would produce one single image. What they've done in the Mark IV, which could be an absolute game changer, is those 2 streams remain split. So you can set the unit to shoot 2 RAW files at the same time, effectively from slightly different angles, which again, they haven't fully explained yet, but it looks phenomenal. Now, if you have these 2 slightly different RAW files sitting in your camera, in post-production, it allows you quite a bit of latitude. Specifically, you can do micro adjustments, and that's micro adjustments to focusing. So the example that gets used pretty often, and some of you might have experienced that, you're doing a makeup shoot, right? And you're focused right in on the model's eye. And you want to get that sharp detail on the eye, but instead of nailing the focus on the eye, you hit an eyelash, and your focus is there, so it's slightly out. With this dual pixel RAW functionality, you will actually be able to move the autofocus point slightly in post-production. So you'd be able to move it from the eyelash back to the eye, or the reverse, whatever you really want. In addition, you will also be able to slightly shift the bokeh. So as you shift the focus point, the bokeh also shifts slightly to compensate for that. You can also do other things like reduce ghosting if you do have some ghosting in your image. And it's the first time that anything like that has been done in a stills camera, at least a stills camera of this magnitude. And for me personally, I think that is going to be an absolute game changer. The video is phenomenal, but I think dual pixel RAW, that's where it's going to be at for Canon. So that, in a nutshell, is the 5D Mark IV. What can I say? From the couple of minutes that we've had with the unit thus far, I am impressed. It just on a purely aesthetical, basis here, it looks good. It feels solid. Everything feels chunky and like it'll last a lifetime. But what else can you expect from, a Canon 5D? They are absolute workhorses. The feature set seems really phenomenal, and we can't wait to try it out in the real world and see how it actually performs. Now, where does this actually fit into Canon's lineup? And I think that's an important spot to touch on. It replaces the 5D Mark III, yes, but Canon also has a whole bunch of other full-frame cameras in their lineup. So right at the top end, you've got the 1DX Mark II, which is your sport and action beast. I mean, that thing will just run forever. Coming a little bit down from that, you've got your 5DS and 5DSR. So those units are running 50 megapixel sensors, very much geared towards studio work, landscape photography, that kind of thing. Then at the other end of the spectrum, you've got the Canon 6D, which is also full frame, and that camera is still going strong. And that's sort of a little bit more budget conscious, gives people who's just stepping up from your more entry-level units, gives them the option to go for a full-frame camera and experience the benefits that gives you. And I think that's really where the 5D Mark IV fits in. It's smack in the middle between the 6D and your 5DS and 5DSR units. And it's the all-rounder. It's that camera that can literally do absolutely anything. You know, will you be comfortable taking this into studio? Absolutely. Landscape photography, no problem. A little bit of sport and action, not an issue at all. Got the autofocus system, got 7 frames a second. What more do you really need? Low light performance from everything that we've heard and that we've seen should be absolutely phenomenal. So, you know, for street photography and that kind of thing, perfect. And then of course, the video features. So really plugging this into smaller productions, documentaries, anything like that should be absolutely perfect. With the 4K functionality, really will elevate that game. From everything that I've seen, I think Canon did a pretty good job here. Well, now that we've spoken about the 5D Mark IV, there's 2 other things on this table that I also want to touch briefly on. And these are the 2 new lenses that Canon now announced in conjunction with the all-new 5D. So very, very highly anticipated, brand new 24-105 f4 LIS USM Mark II lens. And at the same time, they also announced the all-new 16-35 f2.8 Mark III L USM lens. No IS on this one yet. Come on, Canon, get to it. So what we've got here, 2 new lenses, basically replacing previous models. 2 extremely popular models being replaced. Now, the 24-105, off the top of my head, the original lens was released back in 2005. And well, that is definitely due for replacement. So an 11-year-old lens being replaced. On the new one, newly uprated stabilization system on here. Canon's claiming 4 stops of stabilization. Also a new 10-bladed aperture system, should give beautifully smooth bokeh. And then on the unit, also fluorine and air sphere coatings on some of the lens elements. So basically upping the sharpness, upping the performance of the lens, coming in at, again, a very reasonable price, just like the previous model did, so should be a solid unit. The 16-35, much the same story there, fluorine and air sphere coatings. Of course, the 16-35 runs a f2.8 aperture. Now on the previous model, some people complained that it was a little bit too soft and there was a little bit of distortion if you're shooting wide at 16. Now we're really hoping that Canon fixed all of that in this lens. And what we're going to do is, when we get the full production version of the 5D, we'll take these 2 lenses out as well. We'll do some side-by-side for you, and we'll actually compare them against their predecessors head-to-head, and we'll see how they perform. But that's maybe another week or so away, so you know, just hang in there. We will have these for you, and we'll do a proper review on that. Guys, if you enjoyed that video, please don't forget to like, comment if there's anything else that you'd like to know. We'll answer your questions as best we can, and as always, subscribe for more of this. Thank you.